I got every workout from 1983 until 1997. Every single workout, every rep, every set. Preparation notes for Mr. Olympia and all these things. This worked, this didn't work. So very analytical, writing everything, analyzing, studying.
His training diary was his life, and that was him. He knew if he followed X, it would equal Y, and that's what's been proven.
He totally believed what he was doing was right. He had no doubts. That's half the battle. If you believe in something, you can make it happen.
Blood and guts is just to the level where no one's willing to go. I mean, that's what it's about. Turn the body inside out, no matter what it takes. He wasn't going to stop. He was a train.
It was a real regime almost.
Oh, hell no.
They're talking about me.
All I needed was one ball.
The science of training.
And I know you don't think it's a sport.
There you go. What's up, man?
Good, very good.
How you been?
I'm good. I've been, working with this pandemic and changing a lot of how I'm working and, working from home. And it's been actually very productive and how I've been able to pivot the company and actually grow it. I don't know if you're seeing some of the stuff we're doing. We came up with a lot of new products and, put the money into the marketing through target marketing, through an affiliate program, and it's been really blowing up, which is good.
That's fantastic, man. So let's get right to it, Rich.
Okay.
Last time we spoke, you came to the office. We did an interview, and that was right before the pandemic hit.
Okay.
Do you remember that? That was right.
I did an interview at your office.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember.
So how was 2020 for you, man? Talk about it, man.
2020 in regards to my business and in like business sense?
And in general for you as well.
In general, well, at first, 2020 to me was, first of all, it was unprecedented for what happened with, everyone having to stay home and not being able to go out. And, I was really, really concerned about what to do overall for my business. And before even the pandemic happened, we decided to work more, remotely overall with my company. We've been using, warehousing out of Miami, and then my staffing has been, how normalcy would have been where businesses are all run remotely through Zoom. So I had a bit of an advantage doing that. So when the pandemic happened in March, a lot of companies basically said, okay, we can't do anything. We're going to just hunker down until this is over. I decided to make a lot of products for, health awareness. I had a product for immunity, strengthening, vitamin C, elderberry, these type of products that we started to put on the market, and it made a difference. People started, going on our website, and we continued to make new products. We made a new egg protein. We made greens and reds, bone broth, a lot of different products for health and wellness. We started producing overall for the brands, because we're a sports nutrition brand, but we're also a brand that sells nutraceuticals. So let's get into selling what people are looking for, for health and wellness. And that's kind of what we did. And as this progressed, when this whole pandemic progressed, we looked at making other products. Gyms were closed for many, many months for the whole country. Then in around July, at the end of June, July, gyms started opening. So we launched a fat burner, which did very well, called Detonate, and that took off. And from there, started focusing back into sports nutrition, the products that we sell. And, we added more products to the line. I think since March, we've added over 12 new SKUs to the brand. So where a lot of brands have regressed and have done nothing, we've added products. And, I'm very grateful that we profited in 2020, which is not very common for a lot of people. That, they just basically broke even or they lost money. We profited and now continue to work the way we've been working, through using, digital marketing, um, affiliate programs with athletes, um, target marketing. These are the ways that we are now marketing the brand.
That's interesting because I saw a lot of your new brandings. Like you started doing different things. I think it's called the
Yes.
aggression, right? It's like kind of like looks like graffiti. You were in some kind of gangster campaign that you did, right? You're trying to like do different things on social media, right? And the branding, like you change it up.
We change it up a lot because, let's face it, I'm old. I've been doing this for 23 years, and I'm a middle-aged guy. In my 50s, and I'm looking to get the demographics of the younger consumer. I still love what I do. I still, train 5 days a week, so I'm very passionate on that. And we just had to give the brand a facelift. So you saw the products like Super Pump that we sold was our pre-workout. We redesigned it with using the logo from the old product and adding graffiti, calling it aggression. So it's Super Pump Aggression. We're doing the same thing with Sizon. So we just gave it a facelift, and we honed in on those younger um, consumers. When you build a brand, I've been doing this for over 23 years. Every year there's a new consumer that comes about. So if you take a brand like Gaspari that's 23 years old, uh, a 19-year-old kid now wasn't even born when I started the brand. So we had to basically reinvent ourselves to get that 19, 20, 21, 22, 23-year-old kid guy, man, to use our products. And that's what we're doing now. We're getting new athletes, a lot of young new athletes that represent the brand, and I'm trying to put myself more in places. Not when I started the brand, I was more the athlete. Now I'm the legend or the icon, or I want to try to say that, with all my knowledge that I have, I'm kind of like the Joe Weider of modern day. I'm not going to say I'm Joe Weider, but you know what I'm saying, using that as I have all the athletes under me and just building the brand that way. So yeah, we've done a lot of changes in overall marketing. You saw some of this stuff. We're just trying to have fun. Like you saw the commercials we did. We have a flavor for the Super Pump Aggression called Jersey Mobster Italian Ice. So I played the Godfather, one of the videos, and people love that. And then another one is called Gangsta Grape. So we did a Bonnie and Clyde skit. We have another one coming out, Lights Out Lemon. I'm going to play Rocky. We're going to come out with a product, with the lemon, with me, Rocky getting all beat up, and then me winning the fight. So it's just trying to do stuff different to be relevant. You have to be relevant in this industry, and you have to constantly, reinvent who you are. And, I look at myself as I've been this for over almost 25 years. I've been in this supplement industry, and a lot of guys that have been through, I've been through, and what I've been through. I've been through, bankruptcy and, um, ownership changeovers. And, I've been able to take back my company and be in charge overall in my company and build it back the way I want to. And that makes a big difference. And I'm really enjoying doing it, even though a lot of guys at my age in the business are like, aren't you tired? I'm like, no, I'm not tired, because I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. And I'm seeing the results of the company growing again. That's what's really cool. I've always been a bodybuilder at heart, but I'm a true entrepreneur. I love being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you've been through a lot of ups and downs in your life. With the business, I'm saying specifically. I remember you were telling me just like going through the bankruptcy proceedings, right? Just rebuilding it again and again with different partners. What do you think was the worst year for Gaspari and the best year for Gaspari overall? If you take that, the 20+ year.
Well, my best years were when I was, it was probably around 2007, 2008, that I was doing over $100 million in revenue in sales. My worst year was 2015 when I went into bankruptcy. Um, from there, from 2015 to today, it's been very difficult because, if you know anything about business bankruptcy, a lot of times the owner or the person that's ahead of the company gets kicked out. The fortunate thing is that I'm Rich Gaspari, and because I'm Rich Gaspari, it's Gaspari Nutrition. That helps that I'm necessary for the brand. Um, And, a lot of, the ideas that I came up when I first started the brand is what built this brand to be so big. Then in all the minutia and white noise, I kind of lost my way, so, and the brand started regressing and going down. Now I feel like another just excitement to overall being in business and growing this brand to be relevant again in the industry. And we're doing it. We're using today's means of marketing that a lot of older brands don't understand. Like a lot of the older brands are still like stuck on doing, marketing through, let me do the magazines, let me go to trade shows. And all these used to work don't work today. The way you build a brand now is a totally different way that I had to basically change. And making those changes, you send out the same message when you market a brand, but the way you send that message is important to know. As I explained earlier, is target marketing, organic marketing, athlete programs with affiliate programs and all these things had to come about. Bringing excitement through innovation, and constantly reinventing yourself with products. Having the website. One of the biggest changes is we're running a company that's direct to consumer. Before, we used to sell to a store or we used to sell to a distributor, and they would bring that product to the different outlets, and then consumers would get that product. We are selling direct from our website, and that's making the noise to bring in sales. Now, what happens is we still have retailers and they buy from us, but our main focus is on building up direct to consumer.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been screwed by a retailer like JNC or something like that? I was talking to Aaron Singerman recently, right, from Redcon, and he told me he shipped JNC a large volume of products, and they ended up not paying him because they filed for bankruptcy themselves. So it's like a large sum of money that they owe him. You ever been in a similar situation?
Actually, GNC is one of the reasons I went into bankruptcy. They're one of the culprits of. They owed us on the books over $1 million. And what they did is I kept asking to get this as a receivable to collect the money. And because I was working with a bank and they're saying, oh, you got this $1 million to collect. And then it ended up where GNC said I owed them $1 million on returns and credits. So then the bank, because of that, it wasn't that incident, there was many incidents, but that was one of the straws that broke the camel's back. They basically, put me into bankruptcy. So yeah, GNC hurt me because they basically said they didn't owe me money, and it came up with a bunch of like credits and returns that they said they had. That you need a forensic accountant to go through it. They're very good at that. I mean, right now GNC is having their difficulties, big difficulties. I mean, they're going into bankruptcy, and that model doesn't work. And that's another reason, Vlad. What I'm doing is like Redcon, they run a direct-to-consumer brand. And by running that, you have leverage over retailers, because retailers now, if a retailer says to me, hey, what are you going to give me? Hey, we want this. Hey, we want that. I'm going to say, here's the price. Here's a fair price to sell it. Either you want to buy the brand or not. We cause a lot of the excitement through our marketing online. And that's what's causing people to go into their store to want to buy it. We're causing that to go for that store to get people to go to the store and want to buy the product. The other way around is stores were taking advantage of many, many brands like a GNC. And now they're not needed because people are not shopping for product in a shopping mall. People are shopping online. They're going on Amazon. They're going to websites. So it's changed. It's changed so much. But yes, I did get screwed by GNC is the biggest, but I've been screwed by other retailers. A lot of it today is I am collecting the money up front. A lot of these, retailers want to have terms and collect money in 30 days. And since I've started this new way of business, I'm like, you got to pay. I mean, I still have terms with people that I've been working with many years, but you're right. I'm collecting money first. And that's the best way to do it, because it helps. If anyone understands cash flow is key to running a successful business. If you don't have cash flow, you're kind of, in a bad position, even though on paper it shows, yeah, I have all this money, but if those people don't pay you, it doesn't mean anything.
I was curious about also, like, for years now, like, let's say you go to any store, right, and you see Muscle Milk, and you see Quest, right, and you see a couple of brands, like I think it's Pure Protein, whatever it's called, right, some specific like 5 protein brands, right, that you see at every single store, like mainstream, right, and not necessarily because they're the best, but because they were able to kind of like get it into those big stores. Will you ever try doing that as well, like being in like all the Walmarts, all the Targets, you know what I'm saying? And how do they do it? And what do they do different from other
Well,
nutrition brands?
the brands you just mentioned are no longer owned by any entrepreneurs. They're all owned by big corporations. All of those brands have already sold out their company and made their millions of dollars. Quest made $1 billion. Optimum, Muscle Milk that you just mentioned made, I don't know, $300,000-400,000 in selling their company to a big corporation that, of course, then have gotten that brand into the mainstream market, like Walmarts and supermarkets. And yeah, those brands have gone to another level, but those products, they're sold now on the mainstream market. They really don't sell well in the niche markets like what I'm doing right now. So if you're looking at Muscle Milk, someone who's a consumer that really understands, a bodybuilder or somebody that understands products are going to say Muscle Milk is really, it's protein. It's not that it's bad, but it's a lower grade protein than, say, a hydrolyzed whey protein. I don't want to disparage Muscle Milk. I'm just giving an example, but it's a product that, someone, like you said, a mother, that's like, oh, let me get in shape. Here's protein. Let me use this product. But if a real serious, guy who's training in the gym, they're be like, let me get a higher quality protein, because there's different grades of protein. So do I want to get into to that mainstream? Of course, why wouldn't I? I want to get my products into mainstream. I feel I'm very different because I have products that are into the hardcore market, like Super Pump Aggression, but then we're getting a lot of products like Proven Vegan, which is a vegan protein, greens and reds, which are, vegetable health products that we can get into a mainstream market. So, we talk about brands like Redcon. He's done it very well. So he's into the hardcore markets, but he's also getting products into like Walmart as well.
Now, do you ever foresee yourself selling the company to a larger corporation? And do you think it's even possible because Gaspari is so associated with you, Rich Gaspari, right? It's an extension of you in a sense. Is that ever? Do you think it's ever can be a possibility of that? And do you ever want to do it in the future?
With the right price, I would sell. I would sell out. But when you say that your name's attached to it, and you can't really sell. If you have the product, if you have the brand running smoothly, and you're in all the channels, and the brand is recognized, you have an example of like Lancome. Lancome was owned by a person, and now that's owned by a big corporation that bought that name. So yes, you can take my name, and it could become a big corporate entity that sells products. But because the brand is already set up into all the multi channels, it's very easy to just keep that going. You have to get to that point, and that's right now using who I am and having the passion that I have to grow this brand. I think any brand, all the brands that have been out there, they have an ability, because of the entrepreneur, in building that brand and having that passion to grow that brand. Like, I'm very impressed with Jack Owak from VPX. He's a guy who, yeah, Bang Energy. He's an amazing businessman. He was like on the balls of his ass, like I was, just almost the same time, and he was able to reinvent himself with this Bang Energy drink and grow it into $1 billion company, and that happened in the last 5-6 years. So, but he's that person. He's that passionate person that makes all the moves. And, I'm the person who makes all the decision making and the moves. The past 5 years, why Gaspari was floundering is because I wasn't making decisions. I wasn't able to make the decisions. And now that I'm able to now continually grow the brand.
Yeah, that Bang Energy is crazy. They definitely built that. It seems very fast. I don't know how many years it took, really, but it seemed like it was a fast overnight success.
It's not. He's definitely not an overnight success. He's been in the business longer than me. It, Red Line, but before that, he used to sell sports nutrition VPX. He started Bang, recently, but that Bang, he just was able to get it out, and being able to get your product into many, many channels is what he was very successful at doing. And I'm not sure right now. I think he sold to Pepsi, or he has distribution with Pepsi. I'm not sure, but he's made a lot of money in doing that.
Richard, there?
Yeah, sorry,
All
I'm
good. I
there.
can see now.
Can you see me?
Yeah, all good. So last thing I want to ask you about the supplement business. Every year there's more and more companies being added. Some die out. But every year there's new guys coming in with some of them have a lot of budgets too. You know what I mean, to spend. So as every year it becomes more competitive for you, or do you feel like right now it's kind of like clearing up, and maybe brands like yours with credibility will have better chance succeeding in the future? But every year, do you feel like new pressure with new guys coming up?
I don't necessarily feel any pressure because we continue growing. I'm a legacy brand that's been around for over 20 years. And there's competition, but as long as I continue reinventing myself and coming up with innovation, I'm seeing right now very clearly that we can continue growing, while a lot of these companies that even have a lot of money backing them up are unable to grow because they just don't know how to grow in this climate, an industry. And when you said about having a lot of competition, what I've been able to do is, by running a brand direct to consumer, my profits are much higher. When I was selling to distributor, you understand it's a middleman. A middleman I would sell to a distributor who would sell to a retailer that would sell to the end consumer. I am now selling direct to the end consumer, so I can give them better pricing, but I still make more money than selling direct to the distributor.
For sure, man. All right, Rich, let's talk about Olympia. I want to get your thoughts on that. Olympia.
Well, if you guys watched the Olympia on the pay-per-view, I was the commentator with Sean Ray, and I enjoyed it very much. So, I got to speak my mind on who I felt was, you know, going to win the show, and I knew right away that Big Ramy was going to win that show. You know, I could see as soon as he stepped on stage, that's the winner. And Sean was like, "Well, you got to look at Phil Heath, you got to look at Brandon Curry," and I'm like, he's 285 pounds for the first time in shape. As soon as he stepped on stage, what was very impressive about Big Ramy is that he was not only in condition, but he was also in condition on posing. And one of the things that I've been, criticizing most of the pros is they don't focus on posing. They go onto there, and you can see they can't even they breathe heavy because if they're stayed on stage too long, their stomach starts protruding, they start breathing heavy. And old school, when I competed, I spent hours in a posing room posing to get into the proper, conditioning to be able to pose for a long time. What Big Ramy did is he worked with Dennis James, and Dennis James just made him pose like crazy, to get him in condition on stage. So when you watch Big Ramy pose, I'm sorry, you there. Uh, what happened was, when Big Ramy posed, he was the first to pose and the last to get out of the pose. You saw, Phil Heath huffing and puffing. You saw a guy sweating. So when it came down to it, Phil Heath was the definite winner. Then from there, it's funny because it was a 2-day event. When you look at the 2-day event, when you look at the finals, a lot of people said that Hani Chopin should have been much higher, but on the Friday event, he was a little flat. Um, so he didn't look as good. But if you looked at it, William Bonac, another one. William Bonac on the Friday, I mean, he's all together, but he just didn't pop. But then on Saturday, he popped. So it's funny because the 2 days made a big difference for those guys, where, a lot of people thought Ramy was going to start fading. He actually got better. You know, they all got better. You know, even Phil Heath got better, but who I saw a big difference on was Honey Chopin and William Bonac. If it was Saturday, it was only based on Saturday. For me, it should have been Big Ramy, Honey Chopin second, William Bonac third. And it's funny because between Phil Heath and Brandon Curry, they both have glaring weaknesses. Phil Heath, he still has issues with his stomach and holding his stomach in. And he still wasn't the same Phil Heath that won, the 7 Olympias. He wasn't that good. I even think he was not as good as he was when he lost to Sean Roden. The whole thing with Brandon Curry, he's made amazing improvements overall with his upper body. And from the front, his legs look great. From the side, you see it as a glaring weak point compared to, say, a Phil Heath or compared to a Big Ramy, whose side view of their legs, just the hamstring is huge. Their glutes are huge. And that's what I saw between those two guys. They both had weaknesses, so they were flip-flopping for me. And who was better?
So you think Phil didn't improve from 2018, right?
I think he was the same. He was the same or maybe a little less, not as good. And, I noticed he was like huffing and puffing and breathing. It seemed like having that break, he wasn't in condition like to be on stage because they really worked him. And I think he's not used to being worked. He's usually like the guy who wins and they put him to the side and that's it. They worked him, and that's what I think hurt him because he just wasn't in that condition to be able to be worked. And I just think he didn't want it as bad. It's funny. I watched Jay Cutler when he lost to Dexter Jackson. The year later, he came back, and he came back in better condition. Showing off his body like even better, and he literally won. He deserved winning that show after he got beaten by a Dexter Jackson. I just thought Phil just wasn't as good, and I just think Ramy was on his game so much that they just had to give it to Ramy.
Now, in Phil's defense, right? I mean, he went through injuries and surgeries, for hernia. So for him to still be able to come back and be in the top threes.
Oh, he's still he's still the best one of the best bodybuilders in the world. And I'm looking at just there's such small, when you take those top 5, they're so close, it's really hard. Like I told you, Brandon Curry and Phil Heath could flip flop. And you had Honey Chopin and William Bonac, all of those 4 guys, they could have been in any places and it still would have worked out that they would have been satisfied with the, the top 5. Ramy showed such improvements in conditioning and presentation, and he's just a glaring bigger guy. You look at him, he's 285 pounds. He's double the width of the other guys. His presentation was great. His conditioning was great. And he won that show. Can he do it again? I hope he can. I see more, I see Brandon Curry continually wanting to come back because he won that show, and I think he's still hungry to want to come back and improve. So I still think.
Do you think in Phil's mind he was coming back to win and reclaim his title, or do you think in his mind he just wanted to show up and show everybody, again that he's still capable of competing, obviously? But do you think he knew in his mind that he was going to win?
Knowing Phil, I think he wanted to win that show. I wouldn't think he would go with a show just to go with the show. Like, yeah, I look good. He went in that show to win. And I just think 2 years, that 2-year layoff made him a little rusty. Can he come back and improve? He can, but there's a risk that he can even place lower, as Ronnie did. So I don't know. I don't think, Phil Heath's going to come back. That's my thinking. Because what does he have to prove? He's got 7 Olympias. Today, with what you can do through social media, selling ebooks, I know he's doing a lot of different businesses. He could still make a lot of money doing that. When you prepare for a show, that's all you can do. and it's much different. So I don't think he has anything to prove. He's still going down in history as one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. And I just don't think I don't think he should come back, but who knows what he's going to do.
But you know what's crazy? I think it's the first Olympia in a long time that I witnessed that nobody was.
No, and that's what was really exciting is, last year, Honey Chopin got the People's Champion. It was kind of cool that Big Ramy got the People's Champion and he won the show. That's what was really exciting about it. The majority of the consensus was Ramy won that show. He deserved it. And he won as a People's Champion and he won through the judges' eyes. So that was even a sweeter victory.
I feel like the judges this year, like, I don't know, sometimes people always talk about, conspiracy theories and, they talk about the judging not being fair. Do you feel like this year that the judging is kind of like, in many ways, was like respected by the people?
I think so. I think the judging was spot on. Like I said, I was there both Friday and Saturday, as a commentator, and I've been an IFBB judge. And the conditioning of the guys Friday and the conditioning Saturday, like I said, if Hani Chopin and William Bonek were in the shape Saturday, it could have been a different story and they could have placed higher. But I think they just couldn't catch up to both, Phil Heath and Brandon Curry. Between those two, like I said, they could have flip-flopped. So having Brandon second or having or having Phil second, they could have won either way for my mind. And probably in the judging, I bet you they flip-flopped because that's how close they were. But yeah, I think what you said is that the judges definitely, people agreed on the judging.
Sure. How do you feel about 212? 212 Olympia. Sean Clarita.
I think Sean Clarita is an amazing bodybuilder. I mean, he's just the shorter version of Ronnie Coleman. He's a Jersey boy. I've known Sean Clarita when he kind of first started. I used to run these seminars called Dragon's Den, and I ran one in New Jersey, and he was there, and he was one of the guys that helped demonstrate posing, and he was nothing like he looks today. And that's when I had Flex Lewis as one of my athletes, my top athletes, even before he won, the 212 Olympia. And Sean Clarita is very good because he's short in stature, but he's huge. And even though he's short in stature, his symmetry, shape, size, he doesn't look like a short man on stage. When he's there on stage and you look at his body, he's well put together. That's a guy who could even went into the Open and did well, because when he used to have all the athletes, entering the Mr. Olympia, he would have been in that placing in there. But he is definitely very impressive. And I was happy for him to win because I know he worked really hard for that win. Oh, yeah. Mike Christian, yeah, he's like 6'2" and I'm 5'8", and he asked that question.
It's like and he's asking you like, oh, as a shorter bodybuilder, are you supposed to like put on more size? It was a funny moment. Like, Jay Leno had some corny jokes.
Yeah, I was trying to be funny to say, what is more valuable, an ounce of gold or I don't know what I said, 10 pounds of aluminum or something, but when it comes to a bigger guy or a taller guy and a shorter guy, if the truth is that if a shorter guy, if a bigger guy has all the attributes and is perfect, with symmetry, shape, size, and then you have a shorter guy next to him, the bigger guy's going to win. The thing is a lot of bigger guys have difficulties because normally they have weaker legs, they have longer extremities, so they have certain weaknesses. It's harder for a taller guy to develop as easy as a shorter guy. But it is also a shorter guy like, Sean Clarita. He's just well put together, because some shorter guys just look short and squatty. He doesn't look short and squatty. When he's by himself or even next to other guys, he flows very well.
Hmm. How do you feel about classic physique? Because that's kind of like also a similar comparison, right? Like we were talking about Jelena show. You have Chris Bumstead, taller, more slimmer, I would say, but much taller. And you have Breon, who's extremely muscular, right, but a little bit shorter than Chris.
Yeah.
And completely different physiques, right? Completely different physiques.
I definitely liked Chris Bumstead. I think Breon was slightly off. I still believe someone like a Breon, could have won. But I mean, it's more impressive to see that tall guy, on stage. He won last year, so he was a favorite. Um, you're right. Breon has like beautiful shape. He looked a lot more muscular. And I mean, they said he was off. And I saw him, and I didn't think he was totally off. Like they said he was off. That's why he got third. But I don't know. That one I'm not sure. I mean, those guys, they look amazing. I love the classic physique because it reminds me of my era. These guys can all do vacuums. They still look really big. They're just not monsters, but the shape is amazing, muscularity. They're better at presenting their body. They're great presentations. They do vacuums. I mean, I love that part of the sport.
Yeah, for sure. What about men's physique? Your favorite division? How did you feel about the results?
I'm honestly, I didn't really watch it because I was into the classic in the 212, and I'm not so much into the not that I don't discredit those guys as athletes. I just, to me, I'm old school, that, and when I look at those guys that they stand and do quarter turns, it's they have amazing physiques, and a lot of those guys to me should be in classic, but they go into the physique category. I thought the winner looked great. I was backstage, so I didn't see him on stage. So overall, I think they look as great athletes, but I don't enjoy it as much. That's all I can say. I know I'm just my preference. I'm, like I said, I'm not disparaging that they're not athletes. I think they look great overall, but I just I enjoy watching the pose off, and I mean just quarter turns over, and wearing shorts, long shorts to me is like, okay, what's exciting about that?
Okay, in your opinion, right? Because you're the one that brought it up. What can men's physique division do to finally get respect from guys like you?
I guess maybe have some more poses to show their body. I mean, all they're doing to me is just and listen, I'm like I said, they have great physiques, they really do, but just showing the front, the back, and the side. It's funny because I'm friends with Sadiq, and Sadiq said that it's harder to be a physique than a classic because you don't get the pose. You just stand there, and if you don't look muscular standing there, he goes, it's deceiving. It's even harder. So I had respect for that because he goes, it's harder being a physique athlete than being a classic athlete because classic athletes can hide their flaws because they can, sit there and do posing, where a physique athlete has to be spot on. He's got to look muscular because all he's doing is standing there.
I heard the same thing actually. Yeah, you got to just look presentable and still muscular by just standing.
Just by standing there. So, I that's when I had a newfound respect because I love Sadiq's physique, and he told me physique is harder than classic, and he did both.
That's interesting that he said that. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean that's I'm sure that's legitimate. That's a legitimate thing to say.
Yeah, because as he said, it's like, Rich, you don't. He goes, I know you're old school. He goes, but when you stand there, you have to look like stone and show everything, and do your quarter turns and look spot on. Where a classic athlete, can pose and in presentation win that show. You still have to have great lines and shape and all that, but actually make a difference.
Do you think in general, like let's say if two bodybuilders are on stage, right, and one has better physique, can the other guy outpose him and win the show through posing, even though the physique lacks a little bit?
I think if they're close and the one guy is better, say has better genetic shape, but the other guy can pose better and present better, yes, I think I've won many shows. People have, during my career, I've beaten greats, in the sport, like Robbie Robinson and Bob Paris. All these guys are known as having the best physiques, but I was able to present myself and not show my flaws and weaknesses. And I get, in history, they say, oh, I've been able to get second 3 years in a row, win the Arnold Classic, win the Pro World. I've won many, many shows, more than guys who have had better genetic structures than me, because I was able to present myself better. So that question in classic, I believe, yes, if a guy can present themselves better, they're able to beat a guy who has better genetic predisposition.
Well, that's one of the biggest things about you. Everybody says that you were never blessed like genetically as well as the other guys. Obviously, you have great genetics, but not as to the level. But you outwork the other guys. That's one thing always comes up about you.
Well, I've just watched the video recently about on YouTube, and the guy was like, I didn't like his look, I didn't like his waist, and I didn't like his arms, but he did win 3 second places. He won the Arnold Classic. He won the Pro World. He won 7. Won over 9 Grand Prix. And the guys I've beaten, the list of guys I've beaten, are Lee Labrada, Sean Ray, Mike Christian, Bob Paris, Robbie Robinson. I mean, some of the greats that have been known to have like the greatest bodies in history that I've been able to beat. So there had to be something there, and I didn't just beat him 1 year. It was a 7-year span that I've been able to do that well. One of the things I had genetically over the other bodybuilders, I was able to get in better condition. Conditioning at that time wasn't like it is. Well, today, I think the condition is not as good until you saw Rami. But, they didn't have striated glutes. They didn't have a lot of, striations and veins. And I was able to wow the judges with that type of look that was never seen before me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How much cardio did you used to do when you used to work out, like back in the days?
Actually, not much cardio. It's funny because when I trained, it was more so I had great genetics in getting very lean, but I didn't do a lot of cardio. I did actually when in some of my best conditions that I was in, I did very little cardio, maybe 3 days a week. But I did train very, very hard. A lot of drop sets, a lot of supersets, a lot of going from exercise to exercise very quickly. And a lot of times my heart rate was really pumping hard. And the training itself burned fat. I was very in tune with diet then, but I didn't do as much cardio as people thought I did. I felt when towards the end of my career, I started doing cardio because my metabolism, when you diet so hard, you start to slow down your metabolism. I had to do cardio, but otherwise, a lot of my major shows where I was in my best condition, I did no cardio.
Interesting, because I thought that was like I was going to ask you, what is the main difference between the guys now and like when you used to compete in your era, like let's say 80s and 90s, right? Like,
I think today the guys know how to train. A lot of the mistakes that we made, the new bodybuilders are not making. A lot of bodybuilders today do not train real heavy on chest. They don't want to have I've torn a pec, and a lot of bodybuilders have been, tore their pecs, muscle, and it's a very easy muscle to tear when you're doing really heavy weights, on inclines and presses. And if you look today, a lot of bodybuilders are very careful at not tearing a muscle. Today's bodybuilders, they learn to rest more, where they train body parts once a week. But then I've heard some bodybuilders training body parts twice a week. I used to train 6 days a week, twice a day, 20 to 30 sets per body part, 6 days a week, and doing the body parts twice. A lot of bodybuilders today are not doing that. They give the body more rest. Unless it's a weaker body part, they may train it more.
Did you do like training, like, so like, like Dorian Yates had like a HIIT, it's like high intensity training, which he would do very heavy weight, but less amount of reps. You were the opposite of that. You would do like a lot of.
I would do a lot of sets and reps, and I would do a lot of drop sets, and I would train a muscle to failure. So if I got to I got to my 4th set with the maximum weight that I got only 8 or 10 reps, I would always believe that muscle wasn't really to failure unless I used less weight and did another set. It's called a drop set to do like 8 reps. Then I would drop the weight and do 10 reps, and then drop the weight and do 10 reps again, and then drop the weight and do another 10 reps. I would train that muscle to the lightest weight till I was in total failure. That was always my last set that I trained. Only the last set. The last set, I would do 3 or 4 sets, and then the last set I would train to failure. Not on all the exercises, by the way, but 2 or 3 exercises out of that body part.
I wanted to ask you something, actually. I'm only going to ask you this because your name came up during this thing I'm about to ask you about. So I interviewed Robbie Robinson back in April 2020, right?
Mm.
And I know you know him, obviously, but
Yeah.
he made certain statements in the interview about Joe Weider being racist. And, you know, a lot of people around the Weider company being racist, and he said that sometimes he would win a show but get a smaller check, and you would get second place, you get a higher check than him. Is that I want to get your response on it, just because your name was brought up in the conversation.
That's totally a lie. Joe Weider was far from racist. He actually was one of the first. Listen, I have great respect for Robbie, but I really don't believe. I knew Joe very well. First of all, as a kid, he was one of the first to really promote, black bodybuilders. On covers of his magazines. And there's a bodybuilder named Leroy Colbert, who was the first bodybuilder to have 20-inch arms. Joe would constantly promote him, in his magazines. He was a black bodybuilder. Joe Weider, there's, and it's totally false about prize monies being less. If you place less, you're going to make less. If I was second, I'm going to place less. I'm going to get less than the guy who got first. I've beaten Robbie Robinson. I mentioned it's one of the bodybuilders, like it was one of the greats. And, Joe Weider I'm just saying, Joe Weider was not a racist at all. He was basically fair. And what Joe believed in is that if you worked hard, like I'll give you an example. Joe gave a lot of bodybuilders opportunities in making money. He would offer money in contracts. One of the things before the big contracts came about, he asked me, "Hey, Rich, what do you want? I can give you, back then, $4,000 a month, or would you like a free ad in my magazine?" I said, "I want the free ad," because I knew that I had entrepreneur in my brain. If I had that free ad, I can take that and I can start selling my booklets. I can start selling pictures. I can start selling my shirts, and that free ad would equate to $20,000 in sales, as compared to the bodybuilder who would just accept that $4,000, paycheck. He really liked that. Joe could see that in me, because I didn't want money. I said, I want the fame that's going to make me make more money, and that's what Joe provided for me. And I'm not sure why I've heard Robbie Robinson make those statements, and I think Joe had given a lot to Robbie Robinson. And I'm not sure, why he still feels that way. Robbie is still going to go down as one of the greatest bodybuilders of all time. Great front double biceps, greatest arms. He had so many things that, were great on him. And I'm not sure, I guess he's mad that he didn't win the Olympia. I guess he's mad he didn't beat me in the Arnold Classic that we went against. But I'm not sure, Joe Weider is not a racist.
Rich, how do you feel about women's bodybuilding making a comeback this year at the Olympia? And what kind of vibes did you get from people? Were they happy that it came back? Were people kind of supportive?
I mean, I know Jake Wood likes women's bodybuilding. I truly respect women's bodybuilding, because anyone to look like that has to really work just as hard as a man that develops their body. Is it acceptable mainstream? I don't believe, it is. I mean, I can see someone like that and admire it because of what they've been able to do to get like that. I prefer bikini. I love the wellness, division. I think I love the wellness better than bikini because it's, women with developed glutes and legs, which all men like, most men like. But I do admire women's bodybuilding. Should it be there? Yes, why not? I mean, now it's just, there's so many opportunities for women because you now have the extreme women's bodybuilding. Then you have, what is it called? Women's Physique. Then you have, what is it? What's after physique? There's figure. There's figure. So you have bodybuilding, physique, figure, and then they have the girls who do the routines, fitness. Oh, and then after fitness, then you have wellness, and then you have bikini, and then you have bikini. So women have a lot of opportunities in what they want to do with their bodies, where men have, a couple opportunities. You can either be this extreme bodybuilder, or you can be a classic bodybuilder, or you can be a guy with board shorts. Those are your three categories.
How did you feel about training during the pandemic? I'm sure you went to the gym, and right now the masks are required in the gym, right? So when you go to the mainstream gym, you have to wear a mask. How do you feel about? I don't know what gym you go to. I don't know if you go to a private gym, but wearing a mask. How do you feel like it has negative effect if you train with a mask on all the time?
I think it's very difficult to train with a mask. I mean, I have no choice but to train with a mask. It's funny when you go to like Florida, you go into the gym, you have to wear a mask, but then once you go working out, you can take your mask off. And that's the law in Florida. Where in New Jersey, New York, you got to wear a mask all the time. I trained during the pandemic because I was fortunate, even though the gym was closed down. I was like going into a gym in the middle of the night to go train with the gym owner and was able to get my workouts. It was just me and him training in the gym. So the whole pandemic, I trained, every day. Um, for safety purposes, I mean, it's bad he asking me this question about masks because I'm not a fan of it, but I believe that it is, safety for the other person. When you're in a gym, I think, keep your social distancing, clean the benches that you're using. But I just don't see how they help when you are in a room and you're far apart from people. Yeah. It's funny because they're saying back when the pandemic happened in 1918 that a lot of people got sick from bacterial infections in their lungs because when you're over there breathing your air from your mouth, you have a lot of bacteria in your mouth and you're rebreathing that, it's going into your lungs. It was causing all kinds of bacterial infections. I know somehow when this thing is over, there's going to be a lot of effects that this caused by us being forced to wear masks.
Yeah, I feel like there's still a lot unexplored topics here. Nobody knows the long-term effect of a lot of things. I think.
No, what's going to happen?
There's actually a new study that was just published. I think Washington Post one of the newspapers say you have to double mask. Actually, but it's better if you double mask because it's preventing.
Yeah, so then you really can't breathe. You're like trying to breathe carbon dioxide with a double mask. I mean, I agree. Like, if you don't have like a really strong mask, like, how is it just wearing a shirt over your face really doing anything? I don't think it's doing anything.
Yeah, I hear you. What is your typical day like now, Rich? I hear you wake up at 5 every day. You go train. Take me through your day. How does it work?
Normally, I get up around 5 a.m. I go to the gym. Like about 6. I train till 7:30. I get done, eat my breakfast around 8. I have a son, I have a 1.5-year-old son, so I get to enjoy him in the morning from like 8 to 9, and have breakfast with him. And then I go to work. I start work at 9, in my office. I have my whole 3rd floor is my office. I do everything up here from my videos to working on my computer to my Zoom meetings. So I start working in my office like from 9, and I'll work all the way into 6, 7, 8 sometimes. Um, working on this brand and growing the brand back. I travel once a month to my warehouse in Florida. I go there. I meet with manufacturing to come up with ideas. So I spend a week there every month and come up with a lot of the videos you've been seeing. So we got videographers, higher end videographers coming up with the ideas I have to, to promote the brand. But I'm constantly, like I said, working, about 10 hours a day, 10, 12 hours a day, sometimes working, from my office here and just evolving and growing the company. It's funny. It's like when I started doing this, like this whole pandemic and working from home, you know, I felt that I was able to focus more. A lot of times when you go somewhere, you go to an office, by the time you get there, it's an hour, and then you're meeting with, you have your staff in there and you get distracted. Um, I come in and I focus on what needs to get done, and, you know, always putting down what I have on the agenda to accomplish. I've always been a self-starter, and I enjoy it.
What is the right approach to, especially men over 40, right? Like, if you want to maintain a muscle mass but don't get fat, what is the secret to that? You got to do cardio in the morning. Like, what's the?
I do right now. I told you I train very early. I don't eat. I do fasting training. Even I believed in like fasting cardio. If you want to burn fat, fasting cardio is the best way to burn fat. It's going to the gym first thing in the morning on an empty stomach and doing your cardio. I feel the same way with fasting training. I can train on an empty stomach. I take some aminos, some essential aminos. I take a pre-workout, and I go to the gym and I train. And at first, I was like, I don't think I'm going to get a good workout if I don't have food in me. But I've been able to still get a good workout, but actually lean out because I'm training on an empty stomach. And that's been, I think, my key at being over 40, being in my 50s, to be able to continue getting myself in shape. I train, 5 days a week consistently. I train my whole body, once a week, the body parts. Train abs 3 times a week. So I'm still into it because I make sure I get it done early in the morning. I just feel like when I used to train like midday, and I get so busy from, you get to my office, I had that gym right there. Yeah. And I wouldn't really get a good workout because I'd be too busy getting distracted. I try to get it over with in the morning as early as I can, and do the rest of the day. I don't think about, sitting there like thinking about my biceps or triceps. I think about what I need to do, in working.
Mm-hmm. A couple more questions, Rich. Who gets your attention out of the new school bodybuilders? The guys that are want to come up right now, that are already maybe at Olympia already, but like still, not in the top 5, but the guys that you feel like are going to be the future of the sport.
I like, I think Hunter Labrada is going to be a bodybuilder that's going to be, the future. The bodybuilder I was really impressed with was Akeem Williams. I think he came in 6th. A lot of muscle on his frame. Very, very impressive. Very symmetrical. He beat Dexter Jackson, in the Olympia this year or last year. I think he's going to be the guy who's going to be, you're going to reckon with, that's going to place much higher. Those two that for me stand out, right now.
Hunter is amazing, right? Because his father is obviously a great legacy in bodybuilding. Now he's continuing that legacy, right? It's interesting to see that dynamic.
Oh yeah, to be able to have a son. It's funny because me and Lee get mixed up all the time because we're from the same era. We both have supplement companies, so people that see me think I'm Labrada, and they always go, "Oh, your son's doing great." In bodybuilding. I said, my son's 1.5. Yeah, I'll be like 90 when he's on stage.
So last thing I want to ask you is, what is your take on retirement? When is the right time to retire? Because Lee Haney retired when he was like, what, 32 or 30, whatever. He was very young, right? In the 30s, like early.
31 years old. Well, he had nothing to prove. He beat Arnold's record, winning 8 Mr. Olympias. He was still in great shape. I felt that he could have still continued on because he had better shape than Dorian Yates. But like I said, he accomplished everything he had to do, and he stepped down. I think the guys that continue on when they start like not placing, and they kind of still want to stay up there, and they keep trying and trying and trying, and their body starts to, regress, and they get injuries. I knew when I started placing lower and I was trying to place higher that it was time for me to retire. There's always a changing of the guard of the athletes. You can see it all the time. There's this like 10-year gap where it starts to change, and the new guys come in, and those guys from 10 years, they start to slowly fade away. The only amazing bodybuilder out of all those guys that have been able to prove that wrong was Dexter Jackson, who went 20 years, which is amazing. He went 20 years, competing. This last year, you could tell it was his time to retire. You know, he made top 10, but I can't say anything, you know, bad about a guy who's 51 years old. Placing in the top 10 in the Olympia is still an amazing feat.
Yeah, I know he made a decision to retire before. He announced it before the Olympia, obviously. Right?
Yeah,
I feel like with his, even though they were lower placing, but I mean, still top 10 first of all, and then I feel like next year he would have been top 10 too if he would have chosen to compete.
Yeah, I think he probably still could have got top 10, but what is he? I guess he said, "What am I proving?" And so, you know, he decided to step away. You know, and
I don't know what he was able to do. It's unheard of, you know.
No, to be in that shape, in that condition, and be competitive. That's what's amazing. Be competitive in your 50s. The only bodybuilder to do that in my time was Albert Beckles, but I don't even think he did as many shows as what Dexter did. Because, you know, when I competed, it was funny. My first year in the Olympia, I was 22 years old, and the guy who I came third, and the guy who beat me was Albert Beckles, who was like 53 in the show.
How did I feel?
I mean, I felt I should have beaten him, but that's me as a young cocky kid. But you know, now that I look at it, the guy was a great bodybuilder. You know, to be able to be that competitive, you know, in the Mr. Olympia. The first pro show I went in, I lost to Albert Beckles, and he was like this legend bodybuilder, and I came in as an unknown. He came second to him, and everyone thought I should have beaten him, but he deserved. You know, I think back now, and he deserved to beat me. You know, I was too much of a newcomer.
Last thing I want to ask you: Do you have favorite gurus in the sport? Favorite coaches that you feel like are the top tier coaches in bodybuilding?
Do I have my favorites on the top coaches? I know, you know, Hani. I'm good friends with Chris. I know Chris Aceto. He trains more like, because he's from like my era. He trains a lot of his bodybuilders like old school. Everything from the dieting is very just more like that makes sense. There's no drastic, you know, crazy diets that he gives and training that he gives. And for me, it's Chris Aceto is one of the best, you know, trainers, because he makes it simple. He doesn't make it so complicated to have all this like, you know, drastic diet or drastic training principles that some of these other trainers, you know, follow. I mean, Hani, I've seen what Hani Rambod does, and you know, he's trained guys like Phil and Jay, and he's another one that's, you know, a great trainer. George Farah, but I would still like say I've seen a lot what Chris has done, and I like how Chris handles today's bodybuilders.
Cool, Rich. Thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's always a pleasure.